It's Jeannie Jammer here, and today we will be working on making some fabric flowers. And we've got multiple types to look at and try and make if you want. We're going to start off with 4 small ones, just to show you how they're made, and it'll go quickly depending on the moment in the video. I tried to slow it down where I thought people might need to see a little better to know how it's done. But if you get a little confused during this first section, you will most likely be able to derive whatever you need from the later sections of the bigger flowers to get what you need. Now, with the fabric here, I don't really have the exact measurements. I had a lot of scrap fabric, so kind of just went with it. But I'd say each of these are probably around a foot in length, and probably around 2 inches high is a pretty good one for that, so that you have plenty of room for making your petals, whether they're the thin ones or the thicker ones. It's up to you. And the colors are a little crazy depending, because as I said, these are extra scraps that I had. I've got like a flower wreath in the background and a flower poof, which I will be talking about more later in the video. Okay, now we're starting off with one of the bigger flowers, and measurement wise this is probably about 2 inches height again and maybe 2 feet long. I had rectangle fabric bits of leftover for this, so that's why it looks a little funky. But I find you want to start with the needle and go to the inside of it first. And then you want to do really little stitches, as it shows there, to give you more of a ruffle to it, because it gives you a much nicer design, in my opinion, in the long run. And here is the finished part of the first step of the flower. Depending on how you want it, you can leave it like this, or as I do, I put a small flower inside of it, because I feel like it gives it a bit of a better look to it. finished flower. Alright, here is our next flower, and again the 2 inches by 2 feet bit, and again you want to do the small stitches, and you don't want to go too close to the bottom because you want to make sure you have enough fabric to make sure it's the right way when you're done, because you want the more colorful side of the fabric on the outside. Unless you don't, that is up to you. It also depends on the fabric, on if it's more faded or not, but with most of these that I've been using, it's a lot lighter of a color and not as nice. As you can see, you want to keep your needle going and you want to scoot the fabric off of it now and then so that you don't just get stuck. But you want to be careful because you don't want to tug too tight or you might rip something. You also want to try and in with the needle on the outside, as in this part of the fabric you want to show, because that way when you tie it together it's more likely to have the right side showing out. And I find it easiest to have the fabric scrunched up a bit and close to the end of the thread, but then just use 2 of your fingers while holding on and try and keep the petals straight and on the same side, because if you don't, it'll like to twirl and it will be a lot harder to get it the way you want. And you want to keep an eye on the end of the thread because it will try and not go through it the way it's supposed to. This is the first finished part of this flower, and again you can keep it like this or not. I again put a smaller flower inside because that's just how I like it and I feel like it makes it look better. Here we are with the finished flower for this one. Not the best looking one, but it's kind of just see as it goes. It's not always going to turn out the way you want it, but hey. Here is the larger version of the triangle petals. And you will notice that I tie a lot of knots when I'm finished with the thread. I usually do like 3 or 4. That really isn't needed. You can just do the normal amount. That's just me being a little weird. I don't know why I do that. It just makes me feel better. But to each their own. got your triangle petal flowers. And again, you don't have to put a flower in the middle of it. You can do it how you like. But I'm going to put one in and again because I just do that with most of my flowers. I feel like it gives it a better look, like I said, and sometimes it can give it a more realistic look, even though these are obviously not the most realistic of flowers. And here is the very end result of this flower. And sometimes you might want to like rub the flower petals on your hand. It can give it a little bit better of a look, but again, another thing that it's your choice if you want to do that or just spread the petals out with your fingers. And here we have a thinner petal again, which you definitely want to make sure you do tighter sewing on this so that you keep it with the design and not make it look really weird. This kind of fabric flower I feel like can definitely get away a lot easier without any smaller flowers in the middle. And depending on the fabric you're using, you'll want to leave it without the smaller flower, which you will see later when I do one similar to this with the purple fabric that I have. But for now, I'm still gonna put a small flower in there just because I like it. But as you can see, it's not necessarily needed. Alright, all trimmed up and rubbing the petals again to try and get them to look a little better. And here's this finished flower. Now we're on to the purple of the thinner petals, which the fabric isn't the same kind of thickness. I think it's a little thinner, so it will look a little different than the other ones will. It also may not be the exact measurements of the other ones, as this fabric I actually had quite a bit of and it wasn't having to cut it from scraps. You may sometimes notice that I do struggle a bit with actually knotting and tying the ends of the thread, but you want to make sure that you've got a real tight knot on there or the fabric is just gonna mess up and not look right. But here is our finished purple flower, and as I was telling you earlier, this one looks better on its own without any extra. Okay, now we're using a different material than the others. This isn't even, I guess you would say, thinner material. It is like a t-shirt material, so it's very soft and giving, and it will pull together tighter than the others. I have finished with the white petals, but it ended up looser than I was planning on, so I decided to put it in half and sew it that way halfway through, and then fold it on itself and sew it like that so that it would be put tighter together and actually look more like a bit of a smaller standalone white flower. Okay, so you may not want to keep your flowers like this. You may want them to be kind of standalone or something like that, or put them on a pin or a hairpin. It really depends on what you want. So I've got some kind of leaf-like things that I'm going to be sewing to two of them to try and make them look a little more sightly. Okay, and this one is basically finished. And I didn't say it earlier, but you want to make sure that you start your thread by putting it on the inside part where you won't see it of the green leaf, so that it won't show and look a little strange. And then you can put it back through at the end and just tie the threads where it's hidden and trim it to where it hopefully won't show as much. And obviously you want to have green thread for this part so that it looks better where it shows and everything. I've been using black thread most of the time, but that's just because I have a lot of black thread, and for what I was doing with these flowers, it didn't really matter that it was black thread because I was basically using most of them for the flower wreath or the flower poof in the background, so it wasn't really going to show anyway. That is the triangle petal one. Now we'll go on to our other one. Making sure my thread and everything is straight, and I decided to trim the end of it because instead of the way I usually do it, I'm actually going to put it straight through the center of the flower. And don't worry, it won't show, it'll go through, and the thread will be cut down short enough that through the petals it won't show, but this will make it easier to start off with sewing the leaves to the flower itself. So grab the leaf thing, if you do it like this, and you put it through the center of that, and then you go from there so that it's already centered, and that'll help you with the rest of it. Now, it's completely up to you if you use these kind of things or what you do, but this is kind of just to give you an example and get your ideas going on what you can do if you want to use leaves or something to cover up the bottom of the fabric, because it isn't the most sightly thing, so you'll either want that or it will be like the wreath or whatever where it doesn't actually show. finished the two flowers with the leaves on them. This one got a little bit of a boat shape to it, but you know, I actually kind of like it. And this one you could maybe even have it stand up by itself and just be a little decoration if you wanted. And as you can see here, I added a safety pin to this one, so you might not want to use one that big, but it was the easiest one to use at that moment in time for me. But you can just hook it, unhook it, and put it on like a bag or a hat or something as a decoration. It's, again, up to you what you decide to do. Alright, now here are our finished projects. Right now I'm holding a flower poof which I am actually giving to my mother for Mother's Day, and it's made out of a bunch of these purple flowers that I sewed together, but I will suggest that you make a base or something and don't just sew them together, because it was not the funnest thing to do by just sewing them together. But as you can see, I'm kind of giving you a little bit of an example of how it works, and it makes that kind of round shape, but again, you probably want like a little bit of a fabric base or something for that. And I did sew a ribbon in the middle so it can hang up, which hilariously kind of made it look like a purple shower poof, but and with an inner base, I feel like it'll make it stronger because it's something you're going to want to be careful with if you do it like I did, and the most movement you'll get is like rubbing the petals between your hands. And here's a flower wreath. Now, please don't think that this is an easy thing, and maybe for more advanced people it is, but this has about 30 to 40 flowers on it. Maybe 10 big ones, but a bunch of tiny ones and stuff. And like I'm showing, I have like the purple flowers from the flower poof. I've got at least one or two of those in there, and I've got a white one that's similar design to that. But it's not an easy task, and please, unlike me, use a thimble, because I end up poking my thumb a lot with the needles, and it's not fun, and the fabric does get tough in places. And as you can see here, I didn't sew these. I actually used a huge amount of safety pins to hook these onto the wreath base. And originally I was planning on doing it that way so that I could take it apart and reuse the base again, but it took so long and I just like how it is so much that I decided I'm going to leave it like this. And as you saw in a picture earlier for transition, I actually have this hanging on my bedroom door. And while it's not perfect, I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. And I'm keeping the wreath for me, because that just took so long and I like it. So that's going to be on my door. And like I said, the poof is for my mum, and then I have a bunch of extras. And maybe I'll make some more stuff later. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope maybe this is helpful, and maybe this will help you with making your own Mother's Day gifts. But like I said, it's up to you how you do it. This is just a way to help give you some ideas and show you a possible way to make fabric flowers if that's what you want to do. Anyway, hope you've been doing well, and have a good one.